Yeah, thanks a bunch for having me for Dev Club. And I actually have a disclaimer to make. I need to give back some credits. So to be honest, the hosting is all light here, as sad as I am to say this. But I guess it might be a good thing if you didn't like the pizza. But well, I did, so I think they did a good job. So yeah, it was 2010, I think, when we started with the Estonian version of Dev Club. So really brings back memories. I have been attending a few in between as well. So here we go. To sort of follow after Alvar's really amazing and technical and a good technical presentation, I have something completely different to offer you. I hope many of you can relate because you're all developers, and I do like to believe I'm a developer and not a too bad one, not the best one, but a decent one. And it's a bit of a personal story. That bit ain't going to be too long. And then there's going to be a bit of a synthesis and analysis to wrap that up, and maybe some things to take away from that experience that hopefully might be something that you can use in your career progression or just daily lives. So, boom. The last time I did this, I was running around on stage, so it might be a little bit awkward. I'll try to come back to push the button every once in a while. Right now, I'm the CTO at Greenpin. We're located literally the floor below, the same building. We also build an investment service. If Lightyear is building an investment service for people who want to make decisions and execute on them super easily, we want to build an investment service for people who like to make or prefer to make different kinds of decisions, like which camera to buy or how to spend time with their kids. So we make it super easy to start investing by simply investing money on a monthly basis or as a lump sum. And what we do then is we invest it into a number of sustainable ETFs based on some of the choices that the customer makes. But enough of Greenpin for now. Let's talk about feedback loops. Now first I'll talk a little bit more about myself still. Sorry. So my current professional mission is to make sustainable investments easy and accessible for everyone. Greenpin.com, it's up, got a pretty good uptime, so feel free to go and visit. And a bit of a personal mission that I like to think about when taking a shower or walking in the woods is to overall reduce wasted working hours and enable people to do more than they thought they could, which is a particularly interesting lesson I got from my 7 years in TransferWise before we started building Greenpin. And I think this feedback talk is actually a good sort of part of that, or how that could be, and how to think about this sort of contribution that we all have as professionals. I won't talk to you about Flutter or mobile development or front-end development or design. I am rather going to tell you about how to go out there and get hurt a little bit. And in a good way. It's all going to be good in the end and beneficial. Starting from that journey, it's a very personal journey. Everything I'm going to tell you is true. Might not be detailed or awkward, but I do think that's something that many people who have taken off programming and software development as kids, teenagers, whatever, in their uni years, can relate to in some way. So the year's about 1992. I have this, God knows from where we got it. I think like a Finnish family friend gave it to me. I have this Casio kind of a computer with an LCD screen, 160 times 64 dots LCD, and you could do some sort of spreadsheets and basic programming with it. So it's pretty cool because you could program it, and there was a pretty thick book of about 200 pages filled with all sorts of cool programs. There were some games, there were some utilities as well, stuff like I think like plotting a stone's throw or something. It was super exciting for a young teenage boy. And because I didn't know too much about programming, I then took the book, and then I took the computer with its tiny screen, and literally typed this code in. And then I type it in, and sometimes I type in like 300 lines worth of it, which is a bit of an ordeal if you need to kind of like visually copy paste it from a book. And you spend like 2 hours doing that, and then you try to run it, and then it either just behaves super weird or like kind of gives you a strange error. And I'm like, oh, like what? And then you sort of, I guess like that's a really good way to start like learning about programming. Then I like went back and tried to figure out the for loops and conditionals and so on, and kind of like tried to see where I might have gone wrong. And the problem with that was that, you know, like the computer did give me feedback, but it was a pretty shit feedback loop, right? I had made quite a bit of an investment before I then learned that I literally like made a typo, whether it's like plus for a minus or something else. And then I got a bit older and learned about compiled languages. You know, that's pretty big. If you start from simply typing in basic code and interpreted programs, and then suddenly there's a compiler that at least, you know, gets these weird syntax errors out of your way, and that actually, you know, that took me a long way. So I felt, you know, like right now you can even already start building something. And then maybe some more years passed. I think that was my good friend Erik is here, who I think is someone who's really helped me on my path of becoming a better programmer. I learned about automated tests. So we all write tests, I'm assuming. Many of us, I'm assuming, also do TDD. So we write the tests before we write the code, and it all became even better. And I thought that, well, now this is particularly cool. So on top of just, you know, checking for some basic syntax issues or other like language level issues, I can also use an automated way to quite quickly get feedback on what I've just built, and actually make an effort to make sure, without really testing it or without going through some complicated whatever like data setup or something, I can be sure that it actually works and does what I want it to. And like we all know this picture, right? This is a really typical test-driven design picture. So first you write a failing test, you make the test pass, and refactor, rinse and repeat. You take the next bit. You take the next piece of logic to build. And then when automated functional tests, so to speak, became more and more popular, some people expanded this by first like starting from a failing feature test. Might be a bit awkward, but you can make it work if you kind of get your tooling right. And then you kind of do the same. So you first build this feature test, and then you repeat this like smaller loop, and finally, you know, get to something that is a feature. So in that sense, like in coding, you know, feedback loops as such definitely aren't anything new. And we'll get to that a little bit later. It's a lot about what you put inside of it, right? It's about the quality of the thinking you put inside of it that matters, or actually gives you the value in the end. And then with feedback loops, of course, you know, you can go a bit crazy as well. There's I don't know anybody into extreme programming who necessarily would think about extreme programming in this way, but there's, you know, if you don't take it too seriously, it actually does make sense that there is a lot of feedback going into how we build software, each having their own role in what we do, right? So when we go from TDD to BDD and from there on expand towards building features and testing features, etc., we extract meaningful value out of these feedback loops. And just to, you know, like give you a bit of like nighttime tremors and scare you a little bit, like this is I think, you know, trying to draw up these feedback loops, like it did go a little bit wrong in this case, in my opinion, because elicit and prioritize functionality is fine, but I don't come to work to produce a potentially shippable increment. Better than excrement, but that's up for interpretation. So with feedback loops, you can try a little bit too hard to document them, I reckon. But all these loops aside, I think let's fast forward. Maybe I had been writing software professionally for about 10 years, maybe a bit more. By the time I realized that I personally wasn't passionate enough about these loops that we just covered. I felt that I wanted to look at the broader picture, and for me at least, it seemed that working as a software engineer necessarily was not a good way to take this broader look, because it depends a lot on the organization, and the kind of like type of work, or who your customers are, or who your business side is. It depends a lot on that, how much you can then take a broader look or contribute to the bigger picture of what you're building, to the actual feature sets, products, and problems. So I reckoned I wanted a little bit more, and there's maybe other ways to solve this pain or scratch this itch. But I went and like I tried to widen the loop. I tried to make sure, you know, that I can have like a broader footprint, or basically just like work on the things outside of implementing features. So I went and joined a startup. I figured that might be a good way to have more impact. And when I say impact, I mean both, you know, having maybe like a bigger contribution to the end product, but also to have more meaning in what I do. Like kind of get outside of this place where I'm doing things that are expected from me, but actually thinking, you know, maybe like I'm not sure if this makes sense, etc., etc. Kind of wanted to challenge that a bit more than I felt that I could. So yeah, the startup happened to be TransferWise. It was a super fun journey, but that doesn't even matter so much in the end. So in the startup world, that's a very common feedback loop to look at. And in a way, it's not a lot different from the TDD circle we looked at before. It's about figuring out what you want to, like figuring out a change you want to achieve or put into place, figuring out a way how you might be moving towards that change, making the change, and then sort of learning back from what you actually gather. I think Eric Ries was the guy who wrote this Lean Startup book probably more than 10 years ago. So it's called the Learn, Build, Measure loop, and the whole point of it is to iterate towards the maximum learning you need to have about your customer base, about what you're building. And then there, you know, if we map this out a little bit, this building very much still covers like the same circles or same loops we already looked at. Measurement usually involves a lot of tooling, a lot of dashboards, analytics, and numbers and metrics. And learning then is generally the bit where you actually need to, you know, go back and be creative about how you interpret what you reckon or you gain from the numbers. Sometimes the numbers give you a good quantitative answer. Sometimes it's more sort of touchy-feely, and you actually need to go back and think about what to do next. And something that I internalized at some point was that I had spent a lot of time learning how to build things right, and I think there's immense value in there, and I think building things right is something we definitely should aspire towards, but it's only useful if you're also building the right things. It's only useful if you put your craftsmanship to the best use, or actually like build something that actually matters. And when we think about like how do we then get to this understanding of what, like how do we know if we're building the right things actually? So one way to look at it is that well, none of us probably works in an environment where their productivity is measured by lines of code, but some people might be working in an environment where they're rewarded or at least acknowledged for shipping features. And that's not bad per se, but they don't necessarily mean actual progress. It doesn't actually mean that a customer problem gets solved, doesn't actually mean the company gets more revenue out of it. Measuring may take a bit of time. So that also means you should always aim to build as little as possible. I'm assuming many here are familiar with the minimum viable product concept. The point of that is literally just to make sure that you don't go too far off track before your feedback loop has had time to kind of guide you on your path. And in order to actually measure anything, you need to consciously define the metrics that you believe track your progress. Like in the end, that's probably revenues, profits, or customer happiness, etc. But that also takes a lot of time when you get to see this impact in the company's bottom line. You probably would want to start from something smaller, like conversion rates or net promoter scores or whatnot. It really depends on what you're going for. Might also be less time back office people spend clicking on buttons to complete the process. So in a nutshell, and this was quite painful to think about, we may do features, we may launch releases, but these are only inputs, unfortunately. These are maybe outputs of the product development sort of sprint, but not necessarily business-wise are they something that actually deliver value to us. They're absolutely necessary. There's no way how we can make a change or how we can make our customers happy if we don't release new things, but that itself doesn't mean they become happier. So here's a highly scientific chart of confidence over impact, starting from the time I started as a developer. Then I felt I'm a software craftsman. I still really love building software, and I try to do it as well as I can and hold true to my principles. But anyway, I really had my confidence go up, and obviously impact went up as well. Like you become better at what you do, and you actually deliver more, and you get more done. And then at some point, and this is a literal story, and it honestly hurts a little bit to tell it, but I joined the startup I joined fully expecting to go there with my solid software development background and knowing everything around how to, run a tight ship and make things happen and actually, build great software. And in about a few months' time, I realized I may get a chance to do that, but first we need to make sure that we're growing, we're getting to revenue, we're getting new customers, and that almost at all at that point in time does not depend on how tight we are in our software building. Definitely has longer term ramifications, but the understanding for me surely was that I just need to take a broader picture if I want to add value in that particular place and time. That just by going to the CEO and saying that, like, hey man, I think we should now invest into full functional test coverage, definitely would have been beneficial. I'm not saying it wouldn't have, but also wasn't something that the company could extract value from at that point in time. So anyway, so I think the impact actually increased because I sort of realized where it lies or what I'm supposed to do. It's going to be back in a yes. And my confidence really tumbled. Okay, I thought I'm this hotshot coming in to tell others how to build things, and I really realized I'm not, or at least not until I find a way to kind of recalibrate that in this new environment. And then we're getting from building software into maybe more software topics now, but then at some point I started having reports. And my confidence tumbled again. So I kind of knew how to build product, kind of knew how to how to define this actual value that the software systems we build are delivering. And then at some point you realize at least half of your actual impact, or maybe probably even if you spend 66% of your time coding, the actual impact you're having as a team lead of maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 people, is so much more dependent on other people, like the actual sort of end result that you're delivering as a person much more depends on how good you lead these people. So that was the next confidence tumble, and I kind of hope the green line actually did go up. You know, I'm trying to make myself feel good here. But then, you know, finally I kind of figured it out and recognized, you know, with the when implementing the right feedback loops again through people, one can also learn how to do this well. And the problem with that is that, you know, like when we started from here, oops, I hope they're not attacking me. When we started from here, you know, the feedback loops were about getting your test screen, making sure what you build actually does what it's expected to do. From here, it's more around, you know, like actually making the business better. And here, you know, it becomes so much fluffier. You suddenly have like a bunch of people that you maybe, you know, lead a little bit or guide a little bit on their way and guide what the team is doing, but it all takes so much time. Like, okay, you can ship a feature or another, but if you want to make a team work better and then maybe make like a process change or figure out like how to tweak the organization or improve the culture, like the big challenge regarding feedback there is that people tell you whether they like it or not, but you only get to learn whether it actually works maybe months from today, right? Maybe a year. So that's something that really took a good while to come to gripes with. And like zooming out though, like build, measure, learn also, like speaking of product building, it just requires the right metrics. So we need to get the metrics right. If we have a larger organization and we talk about these metrics, like every team, everybody who like owns any part of the system really, or any part of your product, would need to have their own metrics. They like kind of need to have their own thing to work towards. If everybody's like optimizing for revenue or conversion, you know, you just end up running into each other's playgrounds. And then unfortunately, teams as they come, they tend to be as good as their people. You know, like in the end, hopefully a team is more than the sum of its people, rather than being less. And many teams actually are less, just because, you know, well, inevitably it takes time to get a team to work. But some teams just like never do for whichever reasons. And when we, you know, bring this feedback issue to people, then good people know how to take feedback. You know, they appreciate it. They don't get like insulted or hurt, or maybe they do a little bit, but they understand where the feedback's coming from and how to handle it. And I really love people who demand feedback. I think I personally I'm somewhere in the middle. Could ask for more feedback, I guess, occasionally. But really it does help a lot, because when you're really like when you start asking for feedback, you train the muscle of accepting and taking feedback so much that it doesn't even have to be like so good, or like it doesn't need to be some sort of a mastermind looking at your character and job performance and then telling you exactly how it is objectively, but you can start extracting value and sort of, you know, like seeing people for their biases and where they're coming from, and just, you know, put your own picture together. But you can only do that if you just get a lot of feedback in the first place. And in the holy words of Elon Musk, I think it's very important to have a feedback loop where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. Not necessarily affiliated with the infamous green smoke scene, but it is something that Elon Musk has said. And the foundation of how you actually make it work in an organization is something that some organizations call feedback culture. I think if you Google for feedback culture, probably on Amazon alone, there's like a dozen books on that. Engineers speak says the feedback loop is the part of a system in which some portion or all of the system's output is used as input for future operations. We heard a feedback loop in action when no, it's good, no more. When Lembit was boosting the volume before, but effectively, you know, you sort of you take a look at how well you're performing or how your product is performing, and incorporate that into how you develop yourself or how you develop your product. And effectively, that's literally, if we look at TDD, if we look at the build, measure, learn thing, it's absolutely the same thing, right? It's an iterative process of choosing and performing an action and measuring the outcome and like picking your next battle. And that's sort of, might have gotten this from Wikipedia. It's like a sort of a proper engineering feedback definition and description. So looking at a couple of takeaways, being mindful of the time, it's 9 in the evening and we all want to go home. But before that, a couple of snapshots. So first, you always get what you measure. There's almost no way to at least, sustainably or regularly or kind of in a sustained manner to get anything else but the things that you measure yourself or your team or your product for. So you need to measure the right things. Charlie Munger, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And that's exactly true. Maybe we can kind of like gung-ho things for a month or two, but like in the end, people start being recognized for the things that the organization values enough that they measure it. If you measure the right things, feedback loops show your progress. So if you have the right metric in place, then like when you then make progress on this just inevitably needs to be also progress to build a better product, to build a better metric, to be a better leader. And many people now actually wouldn't even join a company if they didn't align with its purpose. So many people want purpose. And if you want purpose, also really kind of need to work for it. So using feedback loops to make sure that then you're sort of moving on the right track, I think is one good way to do it. Something that I believe in is that the ability to solve problems by people and teams is constrained by their speed of learning. If you know exactly what to do and you simply need to execute it, you probably don't have a problem, you just have a task to do. Which is not a bad thing, but it's not really a problem. It's like not complicated. If it's complicated, you probably need to learn on the way. The faster you learn, the faster you get the problem solved. And the speed of your learning depends on the tightness on your feedback loops. So you learn only as quickly as the universe tells you how well or if or whether you're moving anywhere. So it comes back to feedback loops. And you already depend on those in your work and personal development. So like, I'm hoping everyone here has received feedback from a colleague, from a lead, from a manager. I really hope so. If you haven't, you definitely should go and ask. But by finding out how to make more of them can be a really useful way to introduce or make happen the changes you want to see. And I think this really well applies to personal development as well. And like just one way I have done it is in the past is that in addition to my own manager or lead, I think probably had around 3 people in the organization. Some of them like stakeholders, some maybe just like other sort of senior people who I just kind of went to ask feedback for. Sometimes it just wasn't kind of like you just tell me how am I doing, but rather discussing ideas. But just to make sure, that you may be as brilliant as they come, but working in a silo and trying to come up with this masterpiece, no matter whether that's like a piece of software or a feature. Well, most software developers know that building for weeks alone in a cave probably isn't a good way to build good software. But many people who need to write corporate policies, or many people who need to write their master's thesis, or many people who need to just like create the slideshow for the next company all hands. Like some people just kind of so much stay away from learning soon enough that they might be doing something differently, that in the end the result really suffers. And when there are 100 people like watching you present on that stage, nobody really cares if you asked others for advice or if you did it all by yourself. So, you just as well might. Right, sorry about my screen timer, this is annoying. And like on that point, overcoming your fear of being wrong or getting hurt is I guess the first key part to it. Like it's just become so much easier if you don't take the feedback personally. Everyone out there is a person, everyone out there occasionally is an idiot, everybody, stumbles and makes mistakes, and just kind of accepting that for a fact makes it so much easier to go out there and ask for others what they think. And then after I did this the first time, some people asked me that this is all great and fine, but many people just kind of don't know how to give feedback. So with your permission, I'm just going to give you 3 or 4 more points. Might be kind of a good follow-up on the other side of things. I don't necessarily think I'm personally super good at it, but trying to share a few things I've learned. So first is to come from a place of respect. Even if you're the rock star who's been with a company for 10 years and then somebody just joined and makes a mistake, you don't know why. It might be their onboarding failed and they just kind of missed that whatever architecture decision history that you've compiled, or anyway, you don't know why it happened. So best just to ignore all that and start from where you're trying to go from and why what happened is wrong and kind of how to get out of there. I guess this is everybody, everyone who's gone through some sort of a leadership training has heard this, but feedback usually works best if you just go out there and say, hey, maybe you can do this differently the next time, or maybe just, hey, the thing you just did was super awesome. And this is, by the virtue of tight feedback loops, this is just a good way to help keep others' feedback loops tight as well, so that they can learn as quickly as possible and make corrections. So the next time, maybe you don't need to get annoyed by the same problem. And obviously, be as constructive as you can and be specific. It should be actionable, or otherwise, if it's not actionable, it just creates a bad vibe. It's kind of somebody going around and then, looking like they know everything and telling others they could do better. Not necessarily very helpful. Some people might figure it out, many won't. And something that's a really beautiful emotion is by giving good, actionable feedback, even if it's unsolicited, can mean that at one point, people around you start coming to you for feedback. And it's not just an ego thing, and then obviously you can just learn a lot by hearing about others' problems and issues. But it's just a way of helping other people achieve more. And I think that's a really beautiful thought. So we all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. So right, maybe not immediately, maybe tomorrow you can go and ask for feedback. That's all from me.
Stanislav has left the building.
I'll stop the screencast.
Thank you for the presentation, first of all. I wanted to ask, in some cases we know about, geniuses who have to do the things which seem to be counterintuitive to everyone else's opinion. I'm not saying that everyone of us will be in this position, but have you ever had a situation where, for example, you asked the feedback and that went very, strongly against your gut feeling, and how did you try to reconcile both your, inner intuition with the public polling, so to speak?
Okay, so I'm sorry, which role am I in? Am I trying to be the genius, or was it rather?
Just a person who, has very, strong intuition about the things and how they should be, and even though this intuition comes in conflict with the feedback you've collected, so how do you reconcile both?
There's a pretty cool principle that's maybe a bit hard to explain, but not very hard to get. Anyway, so it's called strong opinions weakly held. And what that means to me is that when you think something of something, you know why you think that, and hopefully have a couple of arguments to back it up or back your opinion up. However, it's not your goal to to by all means hold on to that opinion if somebody comes and actually has better arguments. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but like that's something that we actually had in, well, you're wearing a white shirt, so the engineering principle it actually was one of the engineering principles back in the day, at least, you know, that the idea being, you know, that we're able to have like an actual debate and bring strong opinions onto the table, but also like are accepting of sort of better arguments. And for me, I think it might be one way to get around of this, because intuition itself isn't equal to a strong opinion, right? Intuition, well, it can be an opinion, but definitely, you know, it's not an argumented one. And I think, you know, if the person is somebody who then, yeah, like wants to trust their intuition, unfortunately, they also need to go back and find proof to validate it.
Anyone else?
First of all, thanks for a cool topic. That's the question, how to choose a team lead?
Oh, wow.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. The question was how to choose a team lead. Wow. Is that like you as a manager who needs to, you know, look at the team and find somebody to become the lead, or?
You're a business owner. It's your work to do today, just to find those right people who will make all those feedbacks that you will think and maybe some value, maybe not. So if you make a wrong decision, you lose your mind. So what is your like?
I have succeeded and failed in that, and I think the only thing I've learned is that it makes sense to first look at people who listen to others. They definitely don't need to be the strongest in anything in particular, like kind of technically strong or maybe even, you know, like domain wise. But they need to have that ability to, like alignment with the company mission, that as well, and then the ability to actually, you know, keep the team together. I think that's like the first things. I think there are so many other things that can go into it. Yeah.
As a team lead, how would you prefer to get negative feedback about one of your subordinates from another colleague of that person?
Soon, constructively, with detail.
What I'm trying to say is that sometimes you don't really want to be bad to your colleague, but you kind of want to say something negative about that.
Yeah. No, you know, it can start from either end, right? It can start from your either intuition or gut feel that something's, you know, up with somebody, or you just see that people maybe don't get along, and you know, like some people who should, or maybe whatever, like there's some counterproductive issue, or then you actually have somebody coming in and actually giving you that feedback. But I guess that's not the situation. Like, you know, if somebody's already, you know, like making that leap, then you already can hear about it. So I think the way. May I offer one? I have a little bit, and then yes, of course. So well, I don't know of a better way also occasionally to actually make sure that I hear from everybody that person is working with. Maybe not like one-on-one, but at least like, you know, like they've been doing some collaboration with another team, you know, making sure, you know, like some counterpart from there also chimes in and so on. And so what I'm saying is like some of this is also very like proactive and you know, like sort of systemic, just to make sure that it can happen, you know, if there's something to say, that people have a chance to say it.
Yeah, I think a little bit along the same, but you don't have to give the feedback, but ask a question towards that topic, and that might bring out the issue actually on a different tone, and then that opens like a discussion, not like a blunt, just one-way force.
But it is a bit of an art to make sure that like the signal and noise ratio of anything that you hear about somebody in particular, that's, you know, that it's good enough.
Any more questions?
Maybe it adds to this topic, but I'll ask. How to politely make people to improve himself or herself?
Nice one.
Even whether this depends on his job position, whether he stays or leaves.
Okay. I think when,
The person doesn't want to improve.
but the,
But your idea, like
Sometimes-
a community, you try to make him improve to stay at that same position.
unfortunately, sometimes also people don't know that it depends on, like their tenure depends on their
But
improvement or
when they
not.
know,
When they know,
but
when they know, when they
still want
don't,
to improve,
when they know, when they don't care, then, well, that happens. But I mean, like that is true, right? So, you know, like there is no other way to change anybody than to have that intrinsic motivation, you know, to change. If that doesn't exist,
but then your motivation goes down because you cannot improve somebody, but you want.
that is actually, that's a really good point, because I have been in that trap. I hopefully won't
I feel it.
won't get trapped there again. Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent point. And like, you cannot fix another person, that's what they say. It's interesting, right? Because like, you know, they need to tell this to you in whatever, like relationship counseling and leadership courses and so on. Like, you really can't change another person.
How likely you're saying that we want to improve, but actually meaning to kick somebody else?
Yeah.
I have one question. So you mentioned strong opinion and a week of strong opinion and day of strong opinion. So how would you solve the situation where you just need to make things happen or working? No opinions, just make it work.
So yeah, I guess when I said weakly held, then it was like, you know, like held not strong, but weak.
Okay.
But anyway, I think the question's completely reasonable. Well, I think sometimes, anyway, like it needs to start from a common goal, right? Whether that comes back from company's mission, whether that comes back from like the team's responsibility or something, there needs to be this common goal. And I don't think I've ever been in a situation where it's been so bad, whereas, you know, somehow like someone says, hey, as a site reliability team, I think, you know, like we should, you know, do something else instead or something. You know what I mean? Like it's never been absurd like that. But I think also like there might be an occasion where you simply, you know, send somebody out of the room, literally or figuratively. Because like, you know, if there's more conflict then like, you know, if basically it becomes like a liability rather than an asset, and then.
Okay. Unreasonable one. So let's say we have a very good data, right questions, right answers. So my question is, what are magic words which convert those data into performance, into change, into great product?
I think many things can be missing, right? Also might be inspiration or creativity that's missing. If you know what's wrong but don't know of a way to make it better, that's like one part of what I got from you. I don't know if that's an example of what you meant. So in that sense, I think the good thing about quantitative data is at least, you know, it tells you something's off, and then this is a slightly different topic. I'm sorry, but maybe it's helpful. So when looking at product metrics, quantitative data generally shows you whether something is right or wrong, or whether something is, you know, like sort of ticking up or ticking down, so to speak. If something is not working, for instance, or even if it is working, like numbers don't tell you why. And then that's where you need to also start looking at like qualitative issues. You actually need to talk to your users or customers. Sometimes maybe even, you know, borrow a crystal ball and just spend a long evening looking into it and hoping something pops up. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's definitely like a little bit of creativity and also product vision involved. So generally, you know, if you're out there to solve a problem, then usually the customer problems are somehow like parts of it, right? And then you can sort of pick them, you know, like take them apart and then figure out kind of like what to work on. So yeah, I'm not too comfortable with my understanding of your question, possibly. So maybe we can get a question from that end of the room. There's like been none.
There are no hands.
I know. I'm just, you know.
How to encourage people to give you meaningful and honest feedback?
Yeah, that's a very good one, and I think this is a little bit about culture as well. So that's like something that just, you know, if you just constantly encourage feedback, and also maybe just even inside a team, you know, like you just talk about things openly. I think that's just like culture that you can build, and then it just becomes easier over time. But there are unfortunately always people who, you know, just never want to say a bad thing about their desk mate, and then you maybe just need to ask slightly different questions. So I don't think that necessarily means you cannot learn anything from them in terms of feedback, because like most people, I think, are at least aware of some of our shortcomings as well. So nothing's wrong with just going out and, hey, you know, this is something I think I could be better at, or something I don't like about myself. Like, what's your take? And it's like super concrete, you know, and then like you already said, you know, that, you know, I just, like, when you already know, you might be showering a bit more, you know, like there's no harm in asking.
So we have from there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so not everyone likes to give or receive the feedback. Is there like a handbook to properly install this culture or like this approach in the company?
I'm actually quite sure there's quite a lot of books on this. It's, of course, you know, like reading books is one thing, and then implementing them is another maybe. But what I would do is just like depends on your role. But I would do what I can. What I definitely can do is just ask for a lot of feedback. I can find ways how to. If I think something's off or something's good, I can find ways how to actually voice that opinion in a respectful, constructive way. And if I'm a team lead, you know, I can try to make something happen in my team, or maybe also, you know, I can just talk to some peers in the organization and just say that, hey, maybe we should be sharing feedback a bit more, or just kind of, you know, making that a topic. It's a bit soft, I know. Like, no, take these 5 steps.
The last question.
Yeah, oh, sorry for the last one. A real bad question. If you would like it, please don't answer. The question is there any difference for getting feedback from Estonians and expats?
Oh, that's a really exciting question. Yes. No, okay. And I don't think expats can go in the same bucket. I definitely feedback is a culture thing. Like that's the short answer. Both in terms of like quality, honesty, like asking for it. Like in many ways, it's a culture thing. Like my experience, I think Ukrainians, British people, Americans, probably like a bunch of other cultures in the mix. It helps to you know, figure out the lay of the land a little bit. But on the other hand, as silly as it sounds, I think like sometimes, you know, stereotypes can help a little bit as well. Like I know I definitely spoke differently to some of my American colleagues from some of my British colleagues, and it just wasn't only the level of friendship. It was just kind of, you know, how people are, for lack of a better word. But like, but speaking of kind of like getting feedback, for instance, like what's cultural very much is that people just oftentimes don't like saying bad things about others. But also people like when taking feedback, like how well you take it, I think has like some cultural stereotypes maybe, but I don't think it like, you know, it's not a rule. I think, you know, basically the rules are still the same, you know, like be respectful, make it concrete, etc., etc. And also, like, you know, don't get hurt if somebody comes and tells you anything, because by all means, most likely they're working in the same company that you are for the same reason of making something happen. When that's already there, your general goals probably are aligned. There are like more maybe negative backstabbing, whatever cultures, but then like a good advice would just be to get out of there. Like honestly, I think as software engineers, most of us have the pleasure of taking the next job.
Which stereotypes stand out to be the most useful ones?
I think with that's more maybe about relationship building than feedback. Well, like with Ukrainians for sure, something that I feel Estonians share. Just, you know, talk about things how they are, be super blunt, but also, you know, like when that's all put aside, like let's go to the sauna and have a couple of beers and just, you know, like in that sense, I found that to be quite similar. I think I was surprised personally how big the difference is between British people and Americans. Like Brits actually have this, many people at least, like have this super nice, often sarcastic, dry humor, sometimes like dark to a fault. As an Estonian, like, I mean, I really loved it. Like we got along really well. And then like, you know, the American people, like, you know, when we started having more Americans in the company, then I remember it was kind of like, okay, let's not make that joke right now. It's strange. Yeah, that was a surprise to me.
So let's.
Thanks guys, let's go. Yes, platypus socks.